Okay, to look at some of the recent scandals with Stephen Harper again. Conservative candidate Wei Young enlisting Malik into her campaign. Yes. The big deal with this was that Malik had financed a terrorist group that was responsible for the Air India flight terrorist attack, which was the largest massacre of Canadian citizens in recent Canadian history and the largest criminal trial in Canadian history. He had financed this group, and he has now been found to be supporting this conservative candidate financially. And to which Harper responded that she didn't know who he was, even though he's very well known in that area. But anyway, and they're not accepting money from him. Well, that's good, because they already have enough criminals working for them already. They don't really need a terrorist financer working for them too. Okay, an online activist group is suing the federal court to force Auditor General to release her report into G20 spending. Obviously, the Canadian public have a right to know about this. It's not the first time that taxpayers' dollars have gone missing or been misspent. I might go into that in a future video, but definitely the Canadian public has a right to know about this before the elections. Okay, people have been telling me recently, and I've been trying, I haven't seen this myself, but apparently anyone in the media who asks Harper a question that he does not want to hear is drowned out by people who disguise themselves as reporters and are not really reporters. They're conservative supporters who dress like reporters and then move in over and drown out a reporter who asks a controversial question. This has happened a number of times, apparently. I have not seen it myself. Apparently this happened at the just after the English debate for the election, the Canadian election. A question was asked to Stephen Harper. I don't know what question, a controversial question. She was drowned out. Apparently this happened recently with the CBC reporter. And so it's finally getting mainstream attention. So now I can actually report on this. The Globe and Mail reports, conservative partisans deliberately drowned out a journalist's question to Harper during a Greater Toronto Area campaign. So it's finally making mainstream news. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who knows about Stephen Harper and his group and how they do things. But obviously, further attack on our democracy, on freedom of speech, and the journalists' right to report on the news. Anyway, according to one poll, the NDP are in second place currently, just 6 points behind the Conservatives. Another poll has them 10 points behind, and while yet another poll I saw recently has the Conservatives with the majority government. Hilarious, the difference. But if you take this poll seriously, this means a couple of things. One, it means that the NDP are doing really well, which doesn't surprise me at all. And it means that they have a chance of getting in to have the first NDP government in history, which again wouldn't surprise me at all. But it also means that the Conservatives are still actually in the lead, which means that all of these scandals that have come out about him to expose what kind of criminal he and the criminals that he associates with are doesn't amount to a hill of beans. People don't apparently give a damn at all. What really annoys me, of course, are the polls that show that his popularity has gone up with all these scandals, which is completely insane. How on earth could it help his popularity? That's completely nuts. But even just the idea that people don't care and all of his supporters will continue to vote for him no matter what the hell would he have to do to disturb these people? I mean, really, would he have to, like, shoot someone dead on national television in order for people to care? Hey, he just killed someone. That's not right. You know, I think I'm not going to vote for him next time. And what the hell would it take for people to... I don't know. He's done everything wrong, and according to these polls, if you take these polls seriously, which I just can't, they're just ridiculous. I don't see how he could be on board. I don't see how he could stand a chance of getting back in with all these scandals. But if you take it seriously, if you believe that these polls have some kind of accuracy, then you'd have to accept the very real possibility that all these scandals didn't hurt Stephen Harper at all. These people don't care that he's a criminal and a liar and a cheat, and I don't understand this at all. But that is how it looks with the polls. But they do vary a bit, but what they always seem to show is Stephen Harper in the lead, although in this poll, just barely, just by a little bit. So hopefully, there is a chance the NDP, and it looks like they're going to be the ones that have to challenge him at this point. Harper himself has publicly said this. It's going to be down between the Conservatives and the NDP. So hopefully, the NDP can just sneak in with a minority government, and this would be history for Canada, the NDP getting in. They've done a lot of good for our country without ever having a government. By working with a minority government, we have the healthcare system we have today thanks to them. And I know it's not well financed, but that's another thing. Harper lately has been looking disappointed. He has the look of a man who's failed. He looks like he's not going to be getting back in. That's my take, but it could very well just be that he knows he's not going to get a majority. Did he actually think he could get a majority? Maybe he and his people have been just as baffled by the poll results as we've been. It's entirely possible. How do you do a realistic poll result anyway? You question 2,000 people in one city or online on one web page? How can you really take that to represent all of Canada? So, not surprising, these poll results probably would be all over the place anyway. So, it looks very much like he may have actually thought he could get a majority. But the disappointing look I see on his face either means that he's disappointed he's not going to get a majority, or that he's disappointed he's not going to get back in at all. I don't know which it is. I'm hoping it's the latter, but it might not be. People have asked me, what would a Harper majority mean for Canada? I don't think he's going to get one, but if, say, there was a scandal on Jack Layton, people would actually care about that for some reason, because they haven't cared about the other scandals, apparently, and that would mean that Stephen Harper would get a majority. Okay, something like that were to happen. Harper had a majority. Well, it would mean the end of Canada as we know it. I think it's been bad with him with a minority. Imagine him with a majority. He'd stack the deck with Elections Canada just as he did with the Senate, in my opinion. I think that people who are working with Elections Canada will be leaving their jobs one way or another and will be replaced by Conservative supporters. And no matter how the Canadian public felt, I think Stephen Harper would be getting in with the majority government again and again and again. I don't think there'd be a coalition because it has to be approved by the Governor General, who was appointed by Stephen Harper, when he really should have been appointed by the Queen. But anyway, because he's supposed to represent the Queen in Canada. So I don't think they'd get his approval, which would mean they wouldn't have a coalition, not democratically anyway. That would mean that Harper could do whatever the hell he wants to do, with one exception, that is the Queen. She is still technically our queen. I don't think of her as a queen personally, many of us don't. We think of her as just a symbol, but she actually does have some power. The Commonwealth, the British Commonwealth, still technically exists. Technically, if things were to go chaotic here and Harper were to take away all of our rights, we were to protest, the police were to beat down protesters, we were to revolt, and Harper were to create martial law in Canada, and everything was chaotic here, she would have the duty, actually, as the Queen of the Commonwealth, to come in with her military and to remove Harper from power and to see a democratically elected Prime Minister into power. And I know this all sounds, holy crap, this is all over the top. Well, I think it would come to that, I'm not saying the Queen would act. I don't want to say anything about the Queen. I don't have a lot of respect for the royals. I just personally don't. I don't assume anything. If that were to happen, I certainly would have more respect for her, but I don't expect anything like that. But that would be her duty, technically. So I'm just saying the possibilities. Harper could remove her authority by changing the Constitution with an amendment, but that would not change the British Constitution, which states that Canada is still in the Commonwealth under them, and the Queen is still our Queen, you see. In her mind, she'd still be our Queen. So it could get very complicated. But I do think things would come to a civil uprising. If Harper, we'd never get rid of him. I'm telling you, by voting, we'd never get rid of him. He'd fix everything. Everything would be corrupted. He's corrupted a lot in our country as it is, but he'll continue to corrupt everything else. And we'd never get rid of him in any civil way. It would come down to chaos. And I'm telling you, it would not be good if he got a majority, but I'm not frankly worried about that. I don't see him having a prayer in hell of getting in with the majority. I'm shocked. I can't even grasp the concept of him getting back in, even with the minority government. And I just want to say briefly on free trade. Free trade, some people are trying to defend it, but not really defend it. They don't really have anything to say to defend it with, but they're questioning it. Maybe it's not such a bad thing, but yes, it is, because it allows big corporations, mainly American ones, to come in here and to buy up Canadian companies, Canadian corporations. It centralizes wealth, thusly. And it takes jobs, Canadian jobs, and takes them to foreign countries where workers are paid slave wages. So everyone suffers in the end, except for the globalists, the big corporate powers, I mean. That's who Harper works for. He himself is from an oil family, remember? Some people pointed out to me recently that he bears a resemblance to, if you ever watched the TV show Dallas, J.R. Ewing. Not only does Harper resemble J.R. Ewing's personality and his appearance somewhat, his hairstyle, and his eyes, but he is also the oldest brother in his family, from an oil family. Now, would you trust J.R. Ewing to run our country? Hell no. You know damn well he would only look out for himself and his interests. Of course, Stephen Harper, why would we expect any different? We'd be stupid to. I was shocked the first time he got in. I couldn't believe he got in. I didn't think he would get in. I wasn't very political back then. I didn't follow Canadian politics at all, but I was shocked that he got in. Then he got back in. I was in disbelief. I remember sitting on the couch staring at the screen in disbelief. He got in again. I don't know. I really don't know what. I'll need a drink. That's all I know what to say to that. I was in disbelief the last time he got in. It's just, these polls are just astounding to me. They reflect any degree of reality that he could still have a chance of getting back in after all he's done. So anyway, we need to break from free trade. If we could get an NDP majority government, which I know isn't going to happen now, but I mean, maybe next time it's possible. If the NDP could prove themselves worthy to the Canadian public, if they could get a majority government, they might be able to break the free trade agreement. We could get our economy back again. We've never had any problem with it before. We have a lot of natural resources. We're not grossly overpopulated like a lot of countries. We come with a lot of great inventions. That's a Canadian invention right here. Japan twice cut itself off completely from trade with the world, and they returned to the global economy much stronger than before. And I'm not saying we should necessarily do the same thing, although I think that would benefit us. We could still trade, but I'm against the idea that we need to surrender ourselves to the global economy. We don't have to surrender ourselves to the global economy. That's a lie. That is what is hurting us. That is what's destroying our economy. And if we give in to that, we will lose everything we have. Stephen Harper is a part of that lie. He's working for the globalist interests. Corporate interests are what he works for, not Canadian interests. The Canadian public do not grasp this. Like I say, it's disappointing to consider that so many people, after all that's happened, could still vote for Stephen Harper. What does that say about us?